So what has childhood emotional neglect got to do with eating disorders? Well, in this video, I'm going to be discussing exactly what is childhood emotional neglect and what is it and how it can cause us to eat. So before I get into it though, hi, I'm Vanessa McLennan and I help people stop their eating disorders by working on the causes and also the inner you. So keep watching for more tips on how to heal your childhood emotional neglect. Any type of neglect can leave us feeling, void, can leave us feeling empty, and in return what we do to find that is we turn to food. Now, any type of abuse or trauma can lend itself to an eating disorder. And in studies shown it's predominantly women that develop an eating order after some type of abuse or trauma. So what food does though is a really good coping mechanism, and it's also a distraction, but it also gives us lots of nourishment. We need it for the nourishment of our bodies, and we need it to survive. And if you think about when we're a baby, we develop sucking skills right from the very beginning, and breastfeeding also offers that child the connection and the love. And I know when I was breastfeeding my own daughter, if she cried, I'd offer her the boob, and she would instantly feel loved and calmed and quiet, and it was like lovely. And so we sort of like develop that as a child, that nurturing and that soothing and calming feeling. And of course then when we sort of go through life, if we're not getting our needs met, we then can end up turning to food for that nourishment and love. What we are really, I think, craving for as humans, and what we need for our survival is, to be loved, to be heard, to be seen, and just to be valued as people. This is what develops us. And if we don't get that from our caregivers, we're going to seek it from somewhere else. And so a lot of that can come from food. So if we can learn how our emotional needs were not met as a child, we can then use that to help us stop turning to food for the love and support that we didn't get as a child. So what is childhood emotional neglect? Well, it's simply where our emotional needs were not met by our parents or caregivers. So this can be such a covert, type of abuse. Because physical abuse, you might be able to see bruises, if a child is taken to a hospital, for instance. But emotional neglect, how can you tell and how can you pick that up, in a child? And I'm going to come on to the signs in a minute. But it's also perhaps one that might not be, meant, it's not done on purpose. So our parents, could be just completely emotionally immature themselves, or have never worked and resolved through their own emotional traumas, and so that then got passed on to us as children. Our parents didn't know how to handle us, our parents couldn't handle our wild up and down emotions as a child, and just used to react how they knew how, or perhaps how they got treated as a child, by shouting and screaming. But what it can do obviously is just cause us deep pain, because we were not able to emotionally mature as children to be able to then manage our own emotions. Some signs of emotional neglect are simply your parents ignoring you, sending you to Coventry. So it's very immature of your parents, you've annoyed them, so they're going to ignore you. So they're withholding love. Also be shouting or bullying you, putting you down, because like children, you've done something wrong. It could be, telling you negative things about yourself, like you're a brat, you're a horrible little child, how much trouble you are. So horrible things like that, which is really demeaning, your self-worth. You could also have your sense of reality totally, belittled or brushed under the carpet. So in other words, you go to your parents and you're not happy with something. You go to air your grievances and, you're laughed at, or you're told to shut up, or you're told you've got wild imagination, and, go off with yourself. That is a type of emotional neglect, because it is denying you your reality. So what does emotional neglect lead to as, adults, really? Well, we can experience anything from, the same people turning up in our lives. The same type of people, narcissists, bullies, people who are very confrontational. It can also be people who constantly undermine us. So in other words, they reflect that emotional neglect that we had as a child back at us. People talking to us like a child, people sort of talking to us, and we immediately go into our childlike state and feel like we've done something wrong, or we're like, oh help, you know, so we're caught, that rabbit caught in a headlight sort of thing. That can be very overwhelming. That can be very stressful to feel these feelings constantly again and again. And then as a way of coping, as a way of what we do to, you know, because the stress is too much, is we turn to food as a way of helping us heal. So to help us heal from this, you know, childhood emotional neglect, we, you know, can do several things. So here we go. The first thing is get to know our emotions, right? So, you know, this is like when we're feeling withdrawn, when we're feeling perhaps aggressive, when we are feeling, you know, angry with the world. It's working out what we're actually feeling and then what's that about. So instead of using food to totally numb our emotions, as a lot of us do, is actually just sitting in our emotions for a moment, taking a deep breath and just working out what it is it I'm feeling. So the second thing with that is then name that emotion. That can really help to identify and get clarity on our emotions. So what is it we're feeling? And it doesn't matter if it doesn't have a name, it's just, you know, name it anything, even if it's grrr, you know, it's sort of helping us just get clarity over it. The third thing is we can do something called reparenting ourselves, and that's what I talk about in other videos. In fact, I'll put one up here and I'll put another video about healing our inner child and reparenting down below. So it's all about going back and revisiting our childhood as an adult and healing what's called the child within. So helping our inner child manage these, you know, emotional neglectful states so that we start coming through as an adult being able to, you know, handle lots of things really, and not get so triggered by so many things around us. And by doing that, it helps us stopping turning to food for this, you know, love and connection that we need, and instead, because what we're doing is starting to love and connect ourselves. And that's point 4 really, is start to love and connect with ourselves in a way that brings us, you know, happiness and joy really. It's what do we love doing? How can we talk to ourselves that feels good? How can we treat ourselves as our own best friend? So instead of, you know, telling ourselves off constantly, forever going, oh God, you're turning to food, oh my God, being angry with ourselves, perhaps because we've gone on a next binge. It's just taking a step back and just going, look, it's okay, this is just where I am. It might sound really difficult to do, you know, at the time, but it's just finding some acceptance of where we are, and even finding that acceptance and just perhaps offering ourselves that bit of compassion can really help us stop that binging process. And the 5th tip is finding that joy, finding that spark, because finding that passion in our lives, because the more times that we can connect to, you know, the joy and what we love doing, and just, you know, perhaps being out in nature, or is it bath, is it reading, whatever it is, then we connect more with that. That is giving ourselves the love, the joy, and also I think it's telling our unconscious that we are worthy. We indeed are valuing ourselves, and it helps us then connect to this inner us instead of connecting to food. So I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments which tip will work for you.